Hello everybody, I'm Hugo McPhee. I'm the City Administrator for the City of St. Paul Park, and with me today is our Mayor Keith Franke. Mayor, you've been there, done that. You were a prior council member, previous mayor, state representative, business owner of two places in town, back to being mayor. You're a well-known individual in the community. Do you do other work with nonprofits and that sort of thing, or what's that side of the story that a lot of people maybe don't know about you?
Sure. Well, thanks, Hugo. Yeah, so personally, I'm a member of our local Masons chapter. And you know the good works that the Masons do throughout our communities and the ones that surround us. Also, I do sit on the board for an organization called Majority in the Middle, working with some of my prior contacts at the state level and other advocates working towards trying to bring civility back to political discussions and working towards how better to discuss and treat each other when it comes in the political realm, because we're seeing such a division lately that we saw a need, and we're trying to fill it because that's something that's well needed. And the branding between Majority and the Middle, we always hear 15% on the far one side and 15% on the far other side are what we hear the most, but most of us just want to live our lives and belong together dealing with the issues. So we work towards that. Other organizations, you know, our local organizations like our Lions Clubs and Food Shelf and Basic Needs and others, whether it's as mayor, as a business person, try to be involved with, help them get situated or raise funds or donate or help out when I can. I also work as an executive director for another nonprofit called Protect Our Charities. And that's working with nonprofits who benefit and profit from charitable gambling. So a lot of, I guess, in our area, the Cottage Grove Athletic Association is a charitable gambling entity, and so are Lions Clubs and others, and advocating for their needs and the business people and aspects of that work within that realm at the Capitol and other places to make sure they're getting a fair shake. So that's another nonprofit that I work with.
I did not know all of that. I knew you were very active in the community, but that's amazing. So how do you see your role as the local mayor leveraging state resources for some of the cool projects and successful projects we've had coming into the city, 3rd Street among others? How do you mesh that together that you're able to share across both aisles our needs as a small community that we get so much stuff done?
Sure. I think that it's necessary for me in my role to build those relationships, to be able to leverage any availability of any funding of any type that we can get to help our citizens. For one, the bill that was dropped, and I wasn't able to get across the line as a state representative, but Representative Rick Hansen was kind enough to pick up and get across the line with others for the 3rd Street funding. That's almost $7 million that our community wouldn't have gotten that doesn't impact our citizens' property levy tax. So we were able to do that. Another one that we were able to do that should be coming online soon is a new bridge down at Lions Levee that's going to be able to help us as a city maintain that park and make that more usable and user-friendly for our citizens and for anybody that comes to that park, because that's a boat launch that is utilized by people all over the Twin Cities. Another one we're working towards right now is the 61 interchange, working with all of our cities in partnership, Newport, Cottage Grove, us, the county, trying to figure out how we can get MnDOT to fund this interchange at 70th Street that's going to become overwrought with traffic in time with all the expansions and developments. So it's things like that. And I think as the local mayor, it's my job and my duty to work with the council and you and others and our partners around to do whatever we can to take the burden off our citizens and make their lives better. Another one we've been able to do when I first got into office, and it was kind of a big deal, was the PFAS funding, the 3M settlement. That hit right as we were getting into office, and myself, Representative at the time Tony Juergens, and I think Dan Schoen was the senator, and then Carla Bingham stepped into that role afterwards. We're able to secure that funding to make sure that the state, like it likes to do, wouldn't just put that money into the general fund and then it would kind of disseminate how it wanted. We were able to secure those funds that it just goes to the impacted communities. So it's just having those connections and abilities, and availability to work with others at different levels to provide for the citizens.
Yeah. Well, I've been at some of the coffee clutches you've had with other representatives from the area, and one thing that several of them have referenced you as a consensus builder. What does that mean to you? I know you had mentioned that Managing from the Middle was one of the nonprofits you were with. How did you get the reputation of being able to help both sides come together? Because that's really important.
I guess one thing I've always said and I've always tried to do is we try to represent the people that put us in that position. And whether it's mayor or state representative or anything like that. And I think at a local level, all of us just try to do what's best for the community. And I think if you lead from that point, the rest just becomes noise. Because if you keep in mind the people that you represent and you're trying to do the best from your heart with the availability of what's at your disposal to bring together, then you should be able to do it. And if you treat people with respect, then ultimately, hopefully, they will give that respect back to you. I've always tried not to, whether at any level, BS anybody, but to be able to bring those people, find a common ground, and then work from there. Instead of working from the division, let's find that common ground, and then let's figure out what the problem is, and then how are we going to fix that problem. And I think that's one of the things that gives me the ability to bring our neighbors together, to bring our voice out there into the community, whether it's our own at the city level or at the state level or other levels. We've had Representative Angie Craig down to the cafe. She used to come every once in a while. So we even, have a voice at the federal level. So it's just the ability to have that respect, to know that what I'm asking you or telling you ultimately represents the people of the city of St. Paul Park.
Yeah, well, that's a gift and a rare talent, and you're very good at that. One thing I wanted to touch on was the public-private partnerships. You've done many things in the government, grants and leveraging things at the legislature. What are some things you've done with, for example, like a public-private partnership? I know there's some things with the refinery and some other things afoot. Anything you can share in that regard?
Well, I think right now both of us are waiting to hear on the finalization of a potential EMS grant that both of us worked very hard on. That's going to train up all of our offers and volunteer firefighters in the EMS sector to provide that not only to our own citizens but to our neighbors. Being those first responders and having those skills, I think, is very important. We've also been able to work with other businesses to help get them off the ground or help, clear the way, maybe cut some red tape. One of the most recent things I think that you and I have also worked on is the sale of the Gerlich building.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And that building has sat vacant since it was sold for the last couple of years, and now we have some new potential businesses hopefully coming in there, and we just had to clear the path a little bit, and that's going to be a big deal. It's hopefully going to bring a few jobs and maybe a little bit of growth. When I first became mayor, our small town, we don't have a lot of business base or retail base. I started to look at how could we utilize our economic development authority. One of the things is I was able to convince the council whatever land that we sold as a city that we owned, that money goes into a pool or a pocket or an account in the EDA, and then those funds can be used as grant money for businesses on Broadway, and we called it the Broadway Redevelopment Fund. Several of our small businesses on Broadway have been able to utilize that for upkeep and maintenance of your storefronts on Broadway. So if you're going to invest some of your own dollars, the city will match you up to $2,500. Like I said, in today's dollars, that's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps, and it might incentivize our businesses. It's just little things that we can do with our limited resources to not only help make our city look better, but help it be better.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, the last question, any suggestions you have for residents or students looking to make a difference in St. Paul Park or through commissions or what have you? Any words of wisdom for people who would like to see positive change in the community?
Number one, I would say get involved. I say it at just about every council meeting. We're always looking for people to sit on commissions, and we need people to volunteer to fill those roles. I would also say, voice your opinion. We just had a situation with the small development we having coming into town, and with the ability that I was able to work with staff and the developer and others to kind of change some things. And it was all based upon the fact that people were voicing their concerns. You know, it was weird because when the citizens came, they thought like maybe myself or the council were going to be adverse to hearing their voice. And afterwards, I thanked them. I said, thank you for coming forward, because I'm saying the same things, but I'm only one person technically. I might be the mayor, but you're allowing me to show whatever situation, whether it's a developer, a business, or whatever, that I'm not the only one. This isn't a personal thing, or it's not a city thing. There is no agenda. This is what's happening to our community. So if we hear from you, we can sometimes utilize that voice to make change. And that's the big thing. Help us make that change. Get involved and get to know your neighbor, get to know your community. Take the time, reach out, stop by, whether it's just getting to know the person down the street or head to Heritage Days or some other community festival and introduce yourself. You know, that's the big thing I think that we're losing. We need to almost rehumanize ourselves to one another, and that's what I would love to see.
Yeah, no, that's true. I remember going through the interview process, and one of the themes was quality of life. How are you going to impact quality of life? Because that was very important for you and the council. And just a couple of parting thoughts. Staff have been very active trying to pull the farmers market together. That is going to happen the first Tuesday of the month in June, July, August, September, and October. We'll have music, food trucks, the usual fare at what you see at a farmers market. We're a little light on lettuce and tomatoes, but if you know somebody who can supply a bunch of lettuce and tomatoes, we're all in. So that's up and coming. We have the car show on Wednesday nights. We have Heritage Days coming up. There's a lot of cool community things that draw us together, and we focus on the positive and things that make us cohesive, because that's what's cool about St. Paul Park. So with that, Mayor, thank you. And folks, thank you for taking the time to watch our little video, and have a great day in St. Paul Park.